My name is Rachel Raffay. I created this show because I wanted to help you see that if you have a choice, you can choose a better life. If you're listening to this podcast, you're in a pretty fortunate position. You have free will, ability to connect to the internet, and access to all kinds of new education. This podcast is meant to help you make the most of your good fortune. We talk with all kinds of people here from all walks of life because I want you to see that no matter what your situation, there's always a way to create a life that you're proud of. Hello! In today's podcast episode, we are speaking with my friend Adria DeCorte. Adria is a friend that I have here in Vegas, and she's one of these people that whenever we get together, it just ends up into hours of just delicious conversation. And Adria has a podcast and a website. Her podcast is called Feed Your Hustle, and she specifically works with people who are really busy and don't want to prioritize health over hustle. They already have way too much going on than having to go and think about all the ways in which they should eat healthy and make a million different decisions around that. So she's really good about making healthy doable. And so we have a really awesome, fast-paced episode today where Adria and I talk about, first of all, why what you eat impacts your body and how it affects your business. So she has a really great story about how much it really can affect your business, because I do believe, and I'm sure you know too, when you're eating better, you're going to just have more energy, you're going to feel more clear. The problem is, how do you do it in a way where it's easy? So Adria talks about that. We also talk about the type of food to eat when you want to feel inspired and creative, and what types of food are going to help you feel grounded and productive and ready to hustle. So we go over that. We go over Adria's meal template idea. And meal templates are a spectacular way to make sure that every breakfast and lunch are able to make something really healthy really quickly. So she'll go over that. Her remix idea, which is another way to make sure that you're making things as easy as possible on yourself and still able to eat really healthy. And we go over a couple other things, and then we drill it back into, I asked her at the end, what are your top 3 action steps for people who want to integrate health in their world without having to make it this big deal? And the way that she explains it is actually easier to eat healthier than it is to not eat healthier. So you're going to get a lot from this, I think. Adria is really smart, and she just gives so many great tips here. So enjoy. Thank you so much for being here, Adria.
And thank you so much for having me, Rachel.
Absolutely. So the intention behind A Better Life is to show people that if they have a choice, they can choose a better life. So in that spirit, can you take a minute to share with us some of the things you're most proud of in your life?
Ooh, I definitely can. I love this question when you ask it. I am really proud, first of all, of my husband and my family relationships that I have. They really have been a huge support for me. And one thing that I'm noticing, especially right now, because I have my windows open, is the beautiful weather that we have in Vegas. I'm proud of my mind and my compassion and the movement that I'm growing and the platforms that I've been able to establish with my podcast and my upcoming TEDx talk, and being able to start to share my own passion with other people.
Yeah, and I mean, you are just knocking life out of the park lately. I mean, you always have the TEDx events and I mean, just everything, your podcast, Feed Your Hustle podcast, which I have been really enjoying listening to. You've just got so many different great things going on right now. So Feed Your Hustle, it's about self-care, eating well, moving our bodies, and the balancing act that goes on behind the scenes of our businesses. And I love the concept, but what I really love is how you say that you specifically work with people who do not want to choose health over hustle. So I think it gives people permission to not have to feel guilty around not making health something that they're thinking about constantly. And one of my favorite stories that you've shared on your podcast illustrates why it's so important to merge health into your day-to-day, or at least just consider how it's impacting your business, which is the gluten-free waffle story. Can you share that one?
Yes, definitely. I love how you call it the gluten-free waffle story. A little while back, I went out to lunch, and it was a work lunch. So I went with my husband. It was the middle of a work day, and we went to a vegan diner. So first of all, clearing up any misconception that vegan food needs to be healthy, it absolutely doesn't. And this was not the type of vegan food that is healthy. We're there at the diner. I have a full choice of anything on the menu. I choose what feels the most delicious and order it. The waiter comes out, he puts my plate in front of me, and it's this giant waffle stuffed with sausage and lathered in this white gravy over top. And it was not exactly what I was expecting, not exactly what I'd normally eat, but I believe in food as pleasure, so I ate every bite. Which is nothing wrong with that. But afterwards, the way that I felt, I was tired, I was sluggish, I just felt like falling to the couch to take a nap. And I went back to work, but after I had kind of read the same paragraph 4 times, I realized I wasn't really getting anywhere. And since I didn't have any appointments set up for the afternoon and I worked for myself, I took the afternoon off. But I had that ability, but what if that afternoon was my TED Talk? What if that afternoon I had a really important client call, or I was doing something in my business that I needed to bring my entire full 100% concentration and energy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. It's a great point, and I love how you say, like, it was a vegan sausage, it was gluten-free waffles, but I still felt like crap. And
right, exactly, yeah.
and I feel like, I mean, that shows that obviously eating the food that we do is going to make a big difference in how we're feeling throughout the day. But I think it's just like, it can be confusing because, I mean, there's people out there that are screaming like vegan. There's other people that are screaming paleo is the best for your health and all kinds of different things. So how do you know, like, what food is the best for you and how you're going to feel the best?
And there is so much. There's so much polarizing thought around food going on. And really my take on it is that really what comes down to it is how the food makes you feel. The energy that you feel after it, because certain people might have indigestion or might feel tired after a certain food that other people feel energized by. And we have all different sensitivities and things like that too. So it's really just starting to get really in tune with how the food makes you feel and going from there. And of course, I mean, there are a lot of foods that our bodies are made for. If you think about whole foods, foods that, you know, are as nature intended our bodies to be able to process, that makes sense too, that would be easier to process, easier to get energy from than processed foods or fast food or things like that. So at a point, there is a core amount of types of foods that, you know, make you feel better and you can get energy more easily from. But it comes down to you being able to notice how something is affecting your body.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Obviously, like, whole foods are going to be probably the best ones to start with. And I guess I remember talking about in podcasts in the past, I remember with Eleanor, and I think I have made a podcast about just like even you could track what you're eating and just like track after you eat it, like track how you feel and what you've eaten, and then later on, like an hour later, see how you're feeling now. And eventually you're going to start to see patterns. And I remember even on the podcast with Eleanor Tara, she was saying even raw spinach just did not make her feel good.
So we really can't just like blanket. I'm not a fan of rules. Like, I have a huge belief in balance, not perfection. That I have my own history with being really, you know, having to follow specific rules around food and having to make sure that, you know, that I was spoon combining perfectly and that, you know, I was eating raw foods and all these different things. And really, when it comes down to it, your goal is to feel good. And so you make sure that if there are rules, you're following it. The rules actually support that overall goal.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I was just, where did I just see it? Oh, I was watching a video with Daniel Vitalis. Have you heard of that Rewilding podcast?
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, he's really interesting. So I was watching this video and he was talking about how overall happiness, like nutrition is just 1/4 of it. And there's other elements that we need in order to feel at our best. And so, but I think it's really important. So I'm really glad that you're going through this because I know for me, like, especially with the business stuff, like it feels like more than 1/4, but I'm talking like he's talking like overall big picture with like, you know, getting sunshine and different things and talking about eating clay.
I totally agree with that and that's why on the Feed Your Hustle podcast, on my podcast, we talk about, you know, that full spectrum that's going on, the full spectrum of self-care and eating well and moving your body, managing your time, just, you know, everything that falls into that, because that all ends up affecting our business. It's all the balancing act that's going on behind our business or behind whatever passions we have going on, whatever work we want to do in the world, it all matters coming together.
Yes, I love it. And I love how you can take that specific, like the health, I mean, you take all of it. You talk about self-care, health, moving your body. And with the health piece, one of the things that I wanted to touch on, because you make these personalized meal plans for people, which are spectacular. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you tell people to like eat certain foods for if they want to feel grounded, or certain foods if they want to be creative, or still others, even like during a lunch, which is just so fascinating to me. And let's just start off. Like, can you tell people the types of foods that are good to eat if you want to feel grounded, but also like what grounded means to you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So when I think of food helping me feel grounded, and I guess first I'll say maybe a couple of times when this might be good to have foods like this. So one of the things that I did recently is I went to a retreat put on for speakers, people who were going to do TED Talks, things like that. And I talked to them about the food that you eat and how it can affect your speaking. And one of the things that I talked to them about is after you talk, when you have all this energy built up, all this like nervous sensation, and you have that speaker's high, how to like come down after that and ground yourself by using food and the meal that you have afterwards. So to help put that in context a little bit, I mean, it can be other parts of your life, like maybe you have been interviewed on a podcast, or you have a big launch coming up, or you have something happening where you kind of want to bring your energy back down, ground yourself, get a little bit clear and rooted and not so spacey, so you can start to produce and start to work really well. So that's what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about grounded, is just rooting yourself back in your body and the more productive type of energy, or the type of energy that allows you to kind of come off a high and relax. So it can do both things. So what I think of in terms of food for that would be one of the big things that helps is like root vegetables, beets, sweet potatoes. By nature, if you think about root vegetables, you think about the root chakra. I don't know if people are into that kind of thing, but it just naturally follows it. They're hardier. They tend to be cooked, so they kind of feel satisfying and warming. Those kinds of things are grounding. Anything hearty, I like to, for each of my clients, one of the main grounding meals I give them when I design a meal plan for them is a root veggie soup. So it's beets and sweet potatoes and lentils, all cooked up. It's really simple. It's one pot meal. And eating that, it kind of helps to take your energy down and helps you kind of relax a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like it's taking your energy down, but not in a way where you're feeling exhausted or too full to move, which is
right,
great.
Exactly. So it's still allowing you to have energy, but it's not a chaotic energy.
Yeah, when you talk about it, it feels like just a clean energy.
Yeah.
Awesome. And what about for when you want to be creative? What kind of foods would you recommend then?
Okay, so for creative foods, what I recommend is things that are more light, things that are more fresh. So fresh fruits and veggies. I think of a green smoothie in the morning as promoting creativity because it's light. It's kind of it's not weighing you down as much. You kind of have a lot of energy to have ideas and inspiration. Also good for things like speaking, or if you want to be on your feet doing things. Mm-hmm. Those are the kinds of things. So green smoothies, or even like a salad that is anchored with something hearty like quinoa or lentils or beans or something like that, some protein source.
Perfect. That makes sense. And are there other feelings that you find that people that you work with are going after? And what kind of, so maybe like one or two other feelings, or maybe like the main ones are creative and grounded. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? Those are, because they also translate, like the creative energy is very similar to what I would design for someone who's doing public speaking, because that kind of elevated energy. And a lot of times what I talk about is combining the two. So combining the two components that I see that entrepreneurs need a lot of times are, one, inspiration. So that would be like the creative energy. So fresh foods, fresh fruits and veggies. And then two, implementation. So that's the grounding with, the heartier foods, the root veggies and the gluten-free grains and beans and things like that are like a little bit heartier. So you combine the inspiration, which is that creative energy with the fresh foods, and then implementation, which is the grounding foods. You kind of have this recipe for being able to launch a product, to design something new and put it on the market, to work with your clients and get them to the results that they want.
Yeah, and I really enjoy how, you can eat different things throughout the day. So let's say in the morning is when you're doing your writing or something, and maybe you want to have kind of lighter foods then, so you can just have a lot of ideas and stuff come through. And then it's like time to get into whatever you're working on that's more kind of like you need to spend more little push for it. So then you can move over to the grounding foods. So cool.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of times what I talk about is when putting together a whole day, and this is what I do in a lot of the meal plans I design too, is that it starts off like the bulk of the day is more of those creative foods, more of those that inspiration type, and then wrapping up the day with the grounding types of foods to kind of like bring you back down and to separate your work day from your off time in the evening or something like that.
Yeah, it's like your transitionary foods. Beautiful. So one of the things that I think is really helpful, like just from going through your blog and talking with you, is how you make having healthy foods on hand easy. And I would love if you could tell people about meal templates.
Oh, yes. Okay. So on that whole idea of making it easy, I see my mission as helping entrepreneurs and change makers realize that food does fuel hustle and that it can, and to shift their thinking to food as energy for the work that they want to do in the world. But usually what happens next when I've introduced this whole concept is that they say, but I don't have the time, or I'm too busy, right? I mean, I think that's pretty much universal. I have the same issue. So what I do with clients, with podcast listeners, with whoever I'm working with is simplify kitchen time so that they can eat meals that fuel hustle and then have that energy to change the world, basically. So one of the main tools that I use to do this, honestly, everything I do is so simple. So it's going to seem very simple, but that's the point. I use meal templates. And basically what that is instead of recipes, because recipes require a lot of thinking and preparation, and you have to switch your brain on for them. So instead of that, what I work on myself and what I kind of advocate is using a meal template. So an example of a meal template for breakfast might be that you have a green smoothie every morning. But the ingredients vary based on seasonally, based on, what you actually have in the fridge at the moment. But if you always know you're going to wake up and you're going to make a green smoothie, it doesn't take a lot of thinking. You just pull out whatever potential ingredients you have and get going, right? And what I do in the morning is I listen to a podcast, or I, think through a problem I'm working on that day. It doesn't take thinking, so it can kind of be an automatic process. Let's see, a meal template for lunch might be a big salad with a cup of beef, or some protein source, or something hearty inside. You always know you're making it, but the ingredients might vary, but you still don't really have to think about it that much.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I guess if you're changing up the ingredients, you don't get bored from eating the same thing every day, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. When I go grocery shopping, seasonally different things are available, so that's going to kind of guide what ends up being in your fridge and then what you end up using to make. But I'll go through periods where I'm like, okay, I'm tired of those veggies, and I'll just pick up some veggie that I hadn't used before, so that it naturally shifts what I'm making. But I don't have to think about it when I'm going to the fridge. I mean, when I'm going to the fridge, I grab what's in there right now.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, as we're talking, just even my morning smoothies. I've started putting frozen peaches in them, like every once in a while. And it's like, it makes everything different. I feel so, well treated. And it's just a couple peaches, a couple peach slices in there. So, yeah, just a couple changes can make a huge difference. I love it.
And I love that you're seeing out with the peaches, because I do believe that food needs to be pleasure, and there's kind of a couple components to us feeling more ease around being in the kitchen, or more ease around making us good meals. And one of them is that we're excited about that food, first off. And the second one is that it really does feel easy, that you can open your fridge and see possibilities for what to make, rather than opening your fridge and feeling like you have the there's nothing to eat syndrome.
Oh.
That's a huge distinction. I mean, if you open the fridge and you see, okay, I have beets right there. I know I have lentils and sweet potatoes in the pantry. I can make that root veggie soup that Adria was talking about. Then it feels easy and you just do it.
Yeah, and I think especially for business, like we just had a podcast with Steve Scott talking about how to get rid of your bad habits. And one of the things we talked about was just your creativity wanes throughout the day, your willpower wanes throughout the day. And so I think the easier you can make it with your meals, like, having this meal template for every day you're going to have a salad or some kind of like sandwich with a lettuce wrap or whatever it is, then you don't have to think that much, and then you can take that creativity and it was like, what am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? And apply it to your business, which is awesome.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, yes. Rachel, you so just hit the nail on the head of everything that I totally believe in working with people is that you can divert that energy that it would have taken to figure out what to eat and use it for what you really want to do with your day. Use it for the work that you're doing. Use it for the things you're passionate about rather than having all this energy drained into figuring out what to do or food being hard. And a lot of times people think that they're too busy so that they end up actually getting takeout or going and grabbing something. So I really believe in setting things up in a very simple way so that it's just as easy for you to grab things that are in the fridge.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Even in our house, Don started getting us these, actually in Vegas, I don't know if you've heard of them, it's called Fresh X. They'll basically come and they're in Henderson and you can order meals and they'll bring them to you every day if you want them. And so they'll just give you a bag with the different meals and then you just give them the old bag and they'll take it and they'll just switch it out and it's really good. And I mean, some of the foods are, I think, a little better than others. Like they have these protein pancakes, and when I looked at the calories, it was like 856 calories or something nuts. But then there's other ones that are like berry salads and beautiful, really delicious salads that are just super, super healthy. And anyway, just having those on hand and knowing that we're about to go make them is so much so much more helpful. Maybe like a month or so ago, we were both really hungry, and Don went to In-N-Out. Oh, and while it tasted delicious, I was exhausted for the rest of the night, and I was so annoyed because I had so much to do. So,
yes, I so feel you.
yes. And so what are remixes?
Oh, okay. So remix is something that I put in a lot of the meal plans for clients. Actually, pretty much putting them in all of the meal plans because I think it's a core thing to learn how to do. It's just thinking of a meal that you already made that you have leftovers of and kind of adjusting it in a way that feels fresh and new, adding fresh energy to it even though it's leftovers. So what I'll do a lot is, design a meal. I don't know if this is getting a little old that I've used the root veggie soup so much in this podcast, but say that was a meal that I had for a client to make in the evening. Then I would have for lunch the next day, maybe I would have them add some raw, fresh sauerkraut that's full of probiotics on top and some pumpkin seeds and some fresh greens on top or something like that, something to freshen it up so that you're, continually using the same foods, like if you want to make a lot at one time, but you're kind of changing it up and you're freshening up the energy because leftovers, I mean, a lot of us probably have felt this, that they sometimes feel a little stale or they don't feel like a really fresh energy, even if they're good food.
Yeah, totally. One thing that I do for Don, he loves steak, so he'll eat steak at night, and then he'll have the next morning, I'll make him like steak and eggs for breakfast, and for him, it fuels him. He feels really good with it. And so you intentionally make extra sometimes, right, so that you can have the remixes?
Yeah, intentionally, because if you think about it, you're making food already. Why not make it? If you double the portion or quadruple the portion, whatever it is, it doesn't take that much extra work at the moment, but then, kind of you're allowing yourself to have simple meals for the rest of the week.
Yeah, and even with smoothies, you do that, right?
I do. Well, I have before. Recently, I just my smoothie making time in the morning has turned into a ritual for me that I really enjoy making. But in the past, yes, I've made smoothie batches in advance. You can even freeze half of the smoothie if you're, going a few days or something. Anything, honestly, I believe in anything that makes it simpler so that you can actually do it and not feel overwhelmed.
Awesome. And so for people, I guess, who are just kind of warming up to this idea of feeding your hustle, Are they like, if you had to distill it to your top, let's say, 3 action items for people, what would they be?
Okay, that's a great question. And I totally have 3 things. One is to create possibilities, so that when you open the fridge, you see possibilities. So whether that gets into my number 2 and 3. So 1, create possibilities. 2, to prep in advance. So an hour of prep on the weekend, whether it's the cooking up a batch of beans or a batch of quinoa or something, or chopping some veggies, whatever it be, prep in advance. And that can be the difference between quick meals that power your days or settling for meals that drain your energy during the work week. And then number 3 is just to keep a stocked fridge. You really can't eat what you don't have. So if you want to be eating more salads, make sure that you have plenty of romaine. If you want to eat more green smoothies, make sure you have plenty of dark leafy greens. So it's just those simple concepts. So repeated back, it's 1, create possibilities. 2, prep in advance. And 3, keep a stocked fridge.
You can't eat what you don't have sounds like a tweetable.
Right.
I'm not even into tweetables, but it definitely just sounds so perfect. Awesome. So, we talked about before making this like a fast-paced episode where people could walk away with really great action steps on ways that they can incorporate healthy eating into what they're working on. And I feel like you have over-delivered. I think this is like a short, punchy, awesome episode that people are just going to be able to walk away and immediately have things to do. So I'm so grateful for your time and for all your knowledge. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Absolutely. And can you please let people know where they can find your podcast and find out more about you in general?
Yes, definitely. So you can check out adriadecorte.com. That's my home base. It's ADRIADECORTE. And my podcast is Feed Your Hustle. It's on iTunes, and you can also find it over at my website. And also, if anyone listening wants to just get started feeling that energy and clarity that's going to help run your business better, I put together a free 3-minute morning meal plan that folks can go download on my website at adriadecorte.com/free.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for listening to A Better Life. You can find all show notes for this episode at rachelroffe.com. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe so you can automatically get access to all new shows. Let's also connect. Just go onto Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram /RachelRoffe, and we can talk there. The opinions of all guests here are their own, and I'm not necessarily endorsing any of them. I do want to give you perspective, though. And always remember, if you have a choice, choose a better life.